Mula sa Asian Community Development Council, ito ang Fil-Am in Focus. Mondays at 12 noon, right here on PHLV Radio.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat and welcome to another episode of Fil-Am in Focus, a program by the Asian Community Development Council or ACDC, wherein we discuss critical issues, successes, challenges, and opportunities affecting Filipino Americans. I am your host, Edelweiss Solano. Today's episode is about July being recognized as Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, or BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month, and it is also originally called National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. The BIPOC community often faces unique challenges when it comes to mental health, and today we are speaking to an expert in the field, Trinh Dang. Trinh is the Executive Director of NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness of Southern Nevada. With her own lived experience and a deep understanding of the impact of mental health challenges on her family, Trinh is a dedicated and passionate mental health advocate. Over the past decade, she has guided dozens of families through their mental health journeys, offering support and resources during challenging times. So, Trinh, welcome to Family in Focus, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here today. It's such an honor.
Yes. And we should really begin with what prompted you to have this career in the mental health space.
Yeah, for me, it really started out when I was young, having seen mental health challenges in the family. And to be honest, I didn't know what it was back then when I was younger. I didn't realize that's what it was up until maybe about middle school, high school, when I came across a psychology book. And then I started taking psychology classes in high school and realized, wow, a lot of these things that they're talking about, these symptoms, I see it and I recognize these things. So I actually started out college as a psychology major, but I switched after my first semester and went into teaching, but eventually found NAMI when I went through my own mental health struggles personally. And when I checked into the counseling and psychological services at my college back then, they shared a NAMI brochure with me. And this was back in 2011 or 2010. And I held on to it for about a year because back then I still had a lot of stigma. I just thought, I don't want to talk to anyone about this. Like, it feels weird. I don't know. But finally, after a year, I just thought, I could sign up for a class. And back then I signed up for my first class. And the first time I sat in a room full of other people that shared their personal stories and understood what was going on. I mean, we all had our own specific journeys, our own unique journeys, but it was just nice to know that I wasn't alone. Like, I really felt it in that room. And one thing led to another. I started volunteering. So I trained to become a volunteer teacher for that class that I took. And that was back in 2013. And had volunteered for a number of years. And my background is in education. So I used to be a teacher. And eventually when I moved here to Vegas in 2017, when I reached out to the organization and said, hey, I've been volunteering, teaching these classes for a long time. Like, I would love to teach here in Vegas. And before I knew it, by January 2020, an executive director position opened up. And that's when I officially stepped in as a paid staff. But I've been volunteering with the organization for a long time before that.
Wow, there is really a wide range of reason that led you to that decision and then also to that career journey. And you said that there is a lot of stigma with mental health, and part of that stigma is also that associates with mental health is avoidance and at the same time shame. And can you talk about what are the other mental health challenges faced by the BIPOC communities?
Yeah, I think, and I'll speak to just, my family experience personally, which some people may be able to relate. I know from my parents, they escaped the Vietnam War as refugees of the Vietnam War, and coming here to America, they've often told us we have everything here. We have education, a roof over our heads. We're not worried about the war. And that idea of, we can be strong on our own. And we don't want to bring shame to the family. And we just kind of keep things inside the house and not talk about it. And I think that's the part that makes it challenging and tough, whether it's with an older generation or even the second generation of, being here, where it almost feels like, well, yes, we have everything that we can have, maybe material things, but I think that's the part with mental health, because it deals with the social emotional aspects that we can't see. And it doesn't mean that we're weak. It's that sometimes we need help and support and understanding what that looks like and means. I think some of the barriers to those, having language access when it comes to getting support. I know trying to find a Vietnamese therapist for my grandmother, someone who spoke Vietnamese because she didn't speak English, was really tough. And I think just the nuances of all the different Asian Americans, we have such different experiences. I mean, some people came over for opportunities, but still had their unique challenges as, being new to the U.S. Some came because of war. Some came because of genocide. And there's just such a different, wide variety of reasons why we came. So I think understanding that aspect and finding a provider that really can help, address those things and come from a place of cultural competence or humility would be important.
And then, do we have resources that are that are available for our community that have those that can address those language barriers?
It's tough right now because it would require the providers to be able to speak that language, right? So I think that there are some, like I've been able to find a few, but of course there's always more that's needed. So I think encouraging our young generation, or whoever, doesn't have to be our young generation, anyone wants to make a career switch too, to go into the mental health field, and knowing that, it does take a specialized, specific skill set to help someone process through their trauma and actually learn how to address it and find coping skills is important. So encouraging those folks that do have that skill set of a second language to be able to go into those areas, because we definitely need more of it.
Right. And then NAMI is able to help with individuals who may be suffering from, mental health, and can just reach out to your organization and provide those resources to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to make it clear that we're not clinicians or providers. So we don't provide therapy. We're not diagnosing. We do what's called peer support. So it's other families and individuals that have lived experience and are doing well in recovery. Lived experience meaning maybe this person has experienced depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, or any of the wide ranges of mental health conditions themselves. Either diagnosed, undiagnosed, maybe they've had a history of hospitalization. Some might not have. And the families or caregivers that are providing support to the loved ones are the ones that have been trained to lead support groups, to provide 6 to 8 week education classes, to provide presentations. So we do have weekly support groups at no cost to the community. So all of our programs are at no cost. And if it's in person, which is on Wednesdays from 6 to 7:30, they can just drop into our office and, attend a support group. And if it's online, because we do also have a couple of online groups that people can attend, they just have to register to get the Zoom link in their email. And we also do have a warm line. So what that means is, unlike crisis, so when there's crisis, of course, you might call 988 or 911. We have a 24-hour warm line ran by our NAMI Western Nevada affiliate. And it's open 24 hours, and it's just a warm listening ear. So I know sometimes when we're going through tough and challenging things, and maybe it's in the middle of the night where you can't sleep, it's 2 a.m. in the morning and you feel like you don't have someone to reach out to, or if you know someone that doesn't have someone to reach out to, maybe they just lost someone or went through a really tough time or divorce or whatever it may be, they can call into this number and it's staffed by a trained peer support specialist. To be able to support and help.
Okay, just generally, our culture, we really don't talk about it, not even to our kapatid. Kapatid is like a brother or sister. So what is this number that they can call?
Yeah, it's so I can give you the number too. And if you look on our website, you can find it. It's 772-241-4212. And it's confidential. So it's not like they're going to share it with anyone, but it's just, I know it's hard because I know for me, that's what I often talk about. Growing up, we didn't talk about emotions and feelings or how we felt in my family. So even now it's sometimes difficult to share with my parents or my brothers. My sister and I, it's a little bit easier because she's gone through therapy. I've done a lot of therapy work, so we are a bit more open and can share. And I'll be honest, even the first few times, maybe the first 6 months that I was in therapy, it was hard for me to open up and share. But I would encourage people that, it's okay to sit through that discomfort and feel uncomfortable for a bit, because after a while, you break through that discomfort and it becomes easier. And I realized that the more and more that I opened up and talked about things that I held inside for so long, even sometimes it might have been 5, 10, 15 years that I never talked about or shared with anyone, these experiences or things that happened, it still impacted me whether I realized it or not. And then when I finally opened up and talked about it, the first few times may have been really challenging. I probably cried my whole time through it for months until I finally got to a point. That's what they call processing, right? You talk about it, you journal, you write it down. But to be able to share what that experience was, how I felt, how I was impacted, and how it impacts me today is part of the recovery journey. Because now I can get to a point where I can talk about it and it doesn't impact me in that same way, where I can share my story and not feel activated and not trigger, like, for me to want to cry. And it took a long time to get there, but I think the first step was just feeling safe enough to open up, to share with someone. And although the peer support specialists are not trained therapists, just having someone there to listen and talk to is what's important.
And if you're struggling with a problem or an issue, it's highly important to connect with someone, even just to get a call, that warm line, just to be able to have someone to listen to you, to help you discuss something. If you're uncomfortable saying that to your friend or your loved one, seek support. I think that's important, especially to us, even for Filipinos like me. It's just, there's like guilt and or a shame when you share something with your problem. So I think having someone to talk to who is like someone you don't know is actually very helpful. And I'm glad that you said going to therapy will help someone.
Definitely. I mean, whether it's therapy, whether it's a support group with peer support, or just sharing with someone for the first time. I remember when I took that family-to-family education class for the first time back in 2011. It's the first encounter I had with NAMI, and I share with people. I remember my first day of class when they had us go around and share, why are you here? Like, what is it that you want to get out of class? And I broke down crying, and I tell people not out of sadness, but it was just a sense of relief of, wow, this is the first time that I'm talking about it with anyone. And, I think that shame comes from, are they going to judge me? What's going to happen? But when you're in a room full of people that are experiencing similar challenges, we're not here to judge them, and they're not here to judge us. We just recognize that this is something that we're going through that's really hard and difficult. And that's the part where we give each other support, which is just that safe space to share what's going on and to feel listened and heard and seen.
I love that. Just providing that safe space in for people to be heard and seen. I think that's the most important thing. And historically, marginalized groups like people of color, Indigenous, Black, are face mental challenges because of maybe inequality, racial discrimination. And why do you think it's important that we have a mental health awareness month?
Yeah, I think, honestly, we should be talking about it all year round, but definitely having a month that highlights it, I think sometimes is what kickstarts all that, because then we see community events, we see spaces where people can go to and show up and have these conversations, and that might be what kickstarts the conversation for the rest of the year.
I see.
And so I think just having a month to highlight that is important so that we can have a space to just talk about it.
Do you have any upcoming events at NAMI that provides like safe spaces, like community events?
Yeah, I would say, so we do have our ongoing support groups every week, definitely. And we'll be planning some outreach events as far as conversations in diverse communities. So just check on our website. If you follow our newsletter, if you sign up for our monthly newsletter, there's always events coming up as far as whether it's a wellness class, whether it's wellness class being like Pilates, yoga, mindfulness, and it's all at no cost to the community. But a major big one I want to highlight is our NAMI walks on Saturday, October 19th. Excuse me. And that's where we come together as a community and we show each other support. And I remember the first time that I was at a NAMI walks, and it helped me kind of have the sense and feeling of like, wow, there's like a whole community, like hundreds of people showing up, knowing that I'm not alone, that people care about mental health and we know it's important. So it's a celebration of awareness and coming together of a community.
All right, so October 19, it's a Saturday, and I believe it's gonna be held at Lorenzi Park.
Yes.
At 9 to 12. And for anyone who's wants to support and just be part of a community, visit NAMI website and see for more event details. And you mentioned about barriers earlier. And what are other barriers for BIPOC individuals in accessing healthcare?
Yeah, well, the one that I mentioned was the language barrier first, and just finding people that we can relate to as providers, understanding the cultural backgrounds that we come from has been challenging and tough, as well as just in our communities where we can open up and encourage each other and make it okay. So I think that's where the stigma starts, because within our communities, if we're shaming others for getting support, if we judge others for getting support, that's the stigma. So I think that when we hear others saying that they need help and support, what we can do is say, that's great. Like, encourage people to get professional help. And the analogy that I use is kind of like, if you break your arm or you cut your foot, do you want your neighbor or your friend stitching up your foot or wrapping up your arm? It looks easy, but it takes a professional that understands the anatomy and the body and, how to do it professionally. And addressing trauma sometimes is the same way in terms of seeking therapy or help. But then since there is a shortage of providers, we also can look to each other for support in the sense of peer support or community services where you get the training on, how to provide that support in a safe space.
And that's how we break down the barrier, is seeking professional help and peer support.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see. Okay. And again, provide our audience the resources NAMI have for individuals with mental health challenges.
Yeah. Our website's www.NAMI, so that's NAMI, southernnevada.org. And you'll be able to find, our calendar of events, websites, or phone numbers to the information for the warm line and teen text line too. So we actually have a texting platform for youth under 24.
Okay, thank you. And Trinh, there was also the term like model minority. Can you tell us more about that more of our community faces?
Yeah, I know in the past, the media and the community had used the term model minority. And I know that they meant it maybe with good intentions, but actually that could sometimes hurt the community more than it helps. One, because it could create a divisiveness within our communities. And two, sometimes our community members in the Asian American community especially are overlooked because the model minority myth talks about how we're doing so well as a whole. But really, when you break it down and you look at different groups, as I've mentioned earlier, depending on, what the history, the background, what the motivations were coming to America were, some groups may be struggling more than others and may need the support and help. But because we're grouped together in this model minority myth, we might not always get the resources and support that's needed. And, being pitted against other communities isn't always helpful to the mental health because it kind of creates this dynamic of, oh, well, we're supposed to be, X, Y, and Z. But really, we have to create that space to say it's okay to not be okay. Like, there's been a lot of challenges, and to acknowledge that and not dismiss it.
Okay. All right. And then, thank you for explaining that, Trin. And if there is one advice that you can provide our audience, and what would that be?
For me, I would say it's really getting quiet to know ourselves, because sometimes I think we're on the go so much, like doing. And I know, especially in our Asian cultures, keeping busy. That's what my grandma would always tell me. You got to keep busy so you don't have to think about these things. And helping ourselves, whether it's through journaling, through going to therapy, talking to someone, taking time out for that self-care to make sure we're doing okay is big and important, and recognizing that that's okay. It's good for our mental health to take a break. It's good to be able to enjoy things in whatever shape or form that looks like.
I do remember, and in addition to that, I remember one of the president of the Philippine Nurses Association of Nevada, who did a conference, said that you really have to take care of yourself because you can't pour from an empty cup. So having that break for yourself, time for yourself, really helps. So I love that advice, and everyone who's listening, I hope they take that into heart. And thank you so much, Trin, for having this conversation with us. And maraming salamat. Thank you for your time. And again, I'd like to invite everyone to save the date for October 19 for NAMI Walks of Southern Nevada at Lorenzi Park from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Visit also NAMI's website that's www.nami.org. And also visit their social media to keep up to date with events and mental health resources. Again, seek professional help and support and connect with others. Again, thank you everyone for listening and watching Fil-Am in Focus, a program by the Asian Community Development Council. And for more information about ACDC, please visit our website at acdcnv.org and follow us on our social media channels. Maraming salamat po. Abangan ng aming susunod na episode. Hanggat sa muli.